Saudi Arabia just paid $55 billion for Electronic Arts, not a tech rival, not a competitor, a government buying the games sitting in your house right now. And almost nobody stopped to ask what that actually means. Electronic Arts, founded in 1982, publicly traded American, Madden, FIFA, The Sims, Apex, Battlefield. For more than 40 years, it was the company behind the games on the shelf, the one that quietly felt like it belonged to everyone who ever picked up a controller. And now it's gone private. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of the Kingdom, the pool of oil money the state invests around the world, announced the acquisition. $55 billion in cash, no loan, no condition, no public vote. Just a quiet transfer of ownership while the rest of us were mid-match. No press conference you watched, no ballot you filled out. A change of ownership that happened entirely above your head. For context, that's more than any single acquisition in Disney's history, an entire American entertainment institution bought outright in one move, and nobody asked you if that was okay. So say it again, because it's the part that matters, not a tech company, not a competitor, a government. In this video, how the deal actually happened, why it matters far beyond gaming, and what it means for every game you will ever play. Stay to the end, the last number is the one that should worry you. Start with what EA actually was. Electronic Arts was founded in 1982, and for 43 straight years, it traded on the Nasdaq as one of the most stable names in all of entertainment. 3 generations grew up on its games. This was not a fragile company. EAFC, Madden, The Sims, Apex Legends, Battlefield. Each of those isn't just a game, it's a franchise worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year, with its own audience, its own economy, and its own annual ritual of release that millions plan their calendars around. Buy one of those franchises and you've bought a business. Buy all of them at once and you've bought a culture. But here's the number that defines the modern company. 73% of EA's total revenue now comes from live services. That means microtransactions, in-game purchases, Ultimate Team packs, monthly subscriptions that renew while you sleep. Somewhere along the way, EA stopped selling you a game and started selling you a relationship. One you pay into again and again and again. Ultimate Team alone, EA's card collecting mode, pulls in more money than most studios earn from entire games. The logic of the model is brutally simple. A game you buy once eventually ends, but a relationship you rent never does. That is the quiet shift that made EA worth $55 billion, not the games it sells, but the millions of small automatic payments it collects. So understand what Saudi Arabia is actually buying, not a studio. A recurring revenue machine bolted onto American sports culture, roughly $7.5 billion a year, every year, from people who believe they're just playing. EA's revenue for fiscal 2026 came in at $8.026 billion, up 9%, 325 million copies sold in a single decade. That's not software anymore, that's infrastructure. The games your kids will grow up inside. The subscriptions that auto-renew every month whether anyone's paying attention or not. And here's the rule that runs the whole business. Own the infrastructure, and you own the habit. And habits, unlike hits, don't depend on the next game being good. They only depend on you coming back. But here's the part that gets strange. EA wasn't struggling. It wasn't a wounded company hunting for a rescue. It was profitable, growing, dominant. Which flips the entire question. It's not really why Saudi Arabia wanted EA. It's why a healthy American giant agreed to be sold to a foreign state at all. The honest answer is that for a fund this size, EA wasn't expensive, it was simply available. And availability at the right price is its own kind of invitation. So meet the buyer, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. Before this deal, it already held positions in Nintendo, in Take-Two, and Embracer Group, and it owns ESL Faceit, the largest esports operator on the planet. The EA acquisition values the whole enterprise at $93 billion. This wasn't an impulse buy, it was the next move in a plan that was already years deep. And remember what a sovereign wealth fund actually is, not a private company answering to shareholders, but a state treasury answering to a crown. When it buys, it isn't chasing a quarterly return. It's buying position, and it can afford to wait decades to collect. And why gaming for a country built on oil? Because 60% of Saudi Arabia's own population plays video games, 21 million people. Its domestic gaming market is projected to grow 56% to $2.8 billion by the end of 2026. They're not chasing a hobby. They're building an industry at home and buying the rest of it abroad. Think about the scale of that ambition. A nation that sold the world its oil for a century, now positioning itself to sell the world its entertainment for the next one. One industry analyst summed up the whole strategy in 4 words. Gaming is the new oil. When a government that built the world's largest petroleum economy decides to own the world's most played sports games, that is not a coincidence. They understand precisely what attention will be worth in the next century, and they are buying the wells before anyone else does. Oil ran the 20th century, attention runs this one. And the country that understood the first transition best is now moving fastest on the second. Which raises a question nobody in the gaming press wanted to answer out loud. Here's where it gets complicated. The deal has already cleared antitrust review in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and in China. But there is one gate left, a US national security panel called CFIUS. The deadline, September 28, 2026. There is precedent. CFIUS approved Microsoft's $69 billion purchase of Activision back in 2023. So why would EA be any different? Because some argue EA's games are quietly a form of national infrastructure, that Madden trains spatial reasoning, that Battlefield has been used as a recruiting tool. Whether you buy that argument or not, it is exactly the kind of argument that can stall a deal this size. CFIUS exists for one reason, to decide whether a foreign owner of an American asset is a national security risk. And the moment you frame a video game as a training tool, you've quietly turned an entertainment deal into a defense question. As of May 2026, EA said the deal remains on track, but on track is not done. Until that one stamp appears, this is still a $55 billion bet on a government process that no one, not EA, not the Public Investment Fund, fully controls. And the clock is already running. Here's what's quietly at stake in that countdown, not just one company, but the precedent. Approve this and you've signaled that any cash-rich government can buy its way into American culture, one beloved brand at a time. And while that clock runs, follow the money around the edges of it. Jared Kushner's private equity firm Affinity Partners received $2 billion from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, the very same fund now buying EA, back in 2022. One connection on its own proves nothing. But it is precisely the kind of connection that, in almost any other industry, would have been front-page news for a week. Instead, this happened, a $55 billion takeover of one of America's most culturally significant companies by a foreign government, cleared 3 separate regulatory bodies with almost no public debate at all. That is not an accident. That is how soft power works, quietly, legally, and while everyone is looking somewhere else. So let's name what this actually is. When Saudi Arabia buys EA, it isn't buying a logo, it's buying premium real estate in the living rooms and the minds of hundreds of millions of young people across the West. We already have a word for buying a sport to clean up an image, sports washing. This is the next version of it, game washing. Look at the pattern. Alive Golf bought its way into a sport that didn't want it. Newcastle United turned a struggling club into a trophy, each time the headlines fade and the ownership stays. Gaming is simply the largest, youngest, and most loyal audience they have ever targeted. Because EA doesn't just sell you a game, it sells you a relationship, daily, habitual, emotional. And that relationship is exactly what's being transferred to a government that openly treats gaming as an extension of its foreign policy. The controller in your hands didn't change. The hand that owns it did. If you want to understand who really owns the games you play and who profits from them, subscribe, that is the entire job of this channel. And none of this is hidden. Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia's official economic blueprint, names gaming as a pillar of the country's future economy. Owning EA isn't a gamble, it's a strategy. And strategies, unlike bets, come with timelines and targets. And the target was never just EA. It was a permanent seat inside the daily attention of the next generation, bought once and owned for good. Look at the mechanics because they are staggering. $93 billion in enterprise value, 6 times leverage, $20 billion in debt financing. It is the largest leverage buyout in history, and that mountain of debt now sits directly on top of the company you load up every single night. A leverage buyout means the company is bought mostly with borrowed money and then made to carry that debt itself. $20 billion of it, which means the games have to keep earning, the subscriptions have to keep renewing, just to service what was borrowed to buy them in the first place. So where does it actually stand right now? EA's shareholders voted yes. HSR clearance in the US, done. The United Kingdom, done. China, done. 4 boxes checked. 1 box left. The only question still open is whether CFIUS agrees. And that is the moment you realize this was never really about video games. Here's what we know for certain. EA Sports College Football 25 is the best-selling sports game in US history. 325 million copies, 73% of revenue from live services. Numbers like that don't exist without a deep relationship between the player and the company, and that company is no longer American. Sit with that for a second. The best-selling sports game in American history is now, on paper, the property of a foreign state. And whatever happens to the deal from here, the games you already own, the accounts you already built, the hours you already spent, all of it now sits inside a company that answers somewhere new. Because what Saudi Arabia is building isn't a gaming company, it's a cultural position. The same way it built one in golf with Live, in soccer with Newcastle, in Formula 1. Every acquisition is another room inside someone else's mental real estate, paid for in dollars and measured in attention. And attention, once you own it, compounds. A teenager loading up a match tonight is a customer, a worldview, and a soft power asset all at once for the next 40 years. So whether CFIUS approves this deal or kills it, the conversation has already shifted. A foreign government almost bought EA and may still. That is the story that doesn't go away regardless of the outcome. The line between owning a company and owning a culture just got a great deal thinner. Because the real acquisition was never just the company, it was the relationship, yours, and it changed hands without a single signature from you. Gaming is the new oil. The only question left is who owns the wells.